Maybe you know the situation, Mark, a little better than he does. What's the talk at the moment on what's going to happen in January?
Well, there are certain players that they'd happily get rid of. You know, Casemiro's one. He's got 18 months left in his contract. They'd be delighted to get Casemiro off the wage bill. But again, like Marcus Rashford, who wants Casemiro? So they've got people like Anthony getting off the wage bill. Who wants Anthony? So yes, there are players they'd happily let go, but they can't find people to take them. So they're stuck with the players they've got. And, you know, they've got players like Victor Lindelof, who's out of contract in the summer, but he's injured right now, so they can't get rid of him. Harry Maguire, whose contract is up in the summer, he might actually get a new contract because, like Don said, he's actually been playing well recently and he's shown himself to be a reliable defender. But, you know, that list of players you've got there, you know, Xerxes could go because, like I say, he's struggling right now and there might be some interest from Italy, but there's not a real queue of clubs trying to sign the Man United players because ultimately they are probably they are bottom half of the Premier League players because that's where they are right now. So it's a tough sell. They're on massive wages, big contracts, having been signed for big fees. So how do you get those players out of the club when you're desperately trying to get money in? It's really hard.
To get results. You know, and we're just talking there again about players. Jadon Sancho, there's another player that has been mismanaged at Manchester United. You know, Jadon Sancho, when he was at Dortmund the first time around, everybody thought he was a great player, or he was going to be a great player. But it didn't happen for him at Manchester United, and that's been the case with too many of these players. We were talking Garnacho only a little while ago. What a prospect he could be. Oggy just said it, he's flatlining. So the management and the way the club is being run isn't getting the best out of these players. I still think these players are better than what the manager is getting out of them. His job now is to come up with a formation, come up with a style of football, come up with a passing pattern, a defensive pattern that's going to get them points in this league. Because otherwise, they're going to struggle big time. And there is no hope for them.
And when it talk about hope, obviously it's the last day of 2024. You and Don had a big disagreement earlier in the show. Don's been nodding along, though, to what you were just saying there. So it looks as though we can end this segment on a high, Don.
I'm all right. It's the great thing about football. It's minds to how you see the game and how you see individual players. It's great having an argument, great having a debate. I respect the boys' and your opinion. It's how you see it. And as long as you're steadfast in your argument and you're being fair, then all's good.
But Don, you're nodding along to what Robbo's saying there about Amorim having to do his job.
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, listen, I think we'd all agree that these players are not good enough. So now it's up to the manager to make them good enough. And don't think long-term and think make them good enough like top four. Make them good enough now to get some wins. I mentioned Vitor Pereira. He's been good enough in the 3 games that he's had at Wolves. So he's turned them around. He's put them in a shape where he's put them in a back three. Semedo on one side, Ait Nouri on the other side as wing-backs. Cunha's, I mean, yes, he's got a too-much ban now, but the players that they've got, they've been playing well. He's got Strand Larsen scoring goals. All the players that you watch for Wolves are now in a system where they feel comfortable. That's the biggest thing. That's my biggest critique with Amorim. He put 2 players in, Eriksen and Casemiro last night, in a formation that didn't suit the pair of them. So I was, before the game, thinking, like, if he plays Kobbie Mainoo and he plays Casemiro and he plays Eriksen in a 3, you still haven't got the legs because Kobbie Mainoo can't get around the pitch, but then you've got an extra body. So that might help, and it might help the 3 going against Newcastle's 3. So it gives you a fighting chance. So now I'm looking at the manager saying, right, can you give these players a fighting chance against Liverpool? What are you going to come up with to give them a chance of competing against Liverpool? Because if you don't, you'll get annihilated. So now I'm looking at the group of players that I think are not good enough, so I'm steadfast in that opinion. Now I'm looking at the manager thinking, right, what are you going to do?
All the records that Manchester United are looking at right now are the unfavourable ones, the records that you don't really want. Lost 3 straight home games in all competitions for the first time since the 60s. That's 6 losses in a calendar month for the first time since 1930. 18 goals allowed in December, most in a month since the 60s. 5 defeats in 8 Premier League games under Amorim, which is the worst record for a Manchester United manager in 103 years. And 22 points in 19 Premier League games this season, the club's lowest points halfway through a Premier League season ever. So, Mark, how low is it right now for Manchester United? You know them well.
Well, there's another stat there. So in the calendar year, 2024, they amassed 51 points, which is their lowest by some distance in the Premier League in a calendar year. And it's the lowest since 1989, which you might remember was Fergie's really bad year that the fans were calling for Fergie to go, 89-90. So they had 50 points that year. So that's how bad they are. Man United in that season almost got relegated as well. But they salvaged the season by winning the FA Cup. So this is a historic low for United. It's the worst for 35 years. And that season was that was the nadir of Sir Alex Ferguson's reign. And from that point, they started to grow and develop into the team that ended up dominating the 90s. But back then, they had some players they could rely on. They had a group of players. It was the start of something back in those days. Now it just feels like the end of something. There's nobody there that you can say, this player will be the future of Man United. You know, Bruno Fernandes is 30 now, so it's not him. Rasmus Højlund isn't good enough. Marcus Rashford is going to leave quite soon, all likelihood. Alejandro Garnacho's flatline. So where's the hope for Man United? It's kind of hard to find it right now because none of the players will be the future for Man United. Look at the way they're playing at the moment.
It's going to be difficult.
Because those players at the moment, they're lacking confidence. Some of them have been injured for quite a while. Mason Mount hasn't been able to recover. You know, we were talking about Mason Mount when he was at Chelsea. He'd been an outstanding player. He was playing for England. He was a regular player. He was one of Chelsea's best players at the time. Then he fell away with the manager, whoever the manager was at the time, who sold him to Manchester United for a big fee. And everybody thinks he's going to be an outstanding signing. But Manchester United haven't been able to get the best out of Mason Mount, and Mason Mount has had injuries. So that's a major problem. He's now not the player he was when he first went there maybe a year and a half ago. He's lost his confidence, and it will be very difficult to sell a player like that.
That's some fees and some figures that we're looking at there, Don.
Oh, well, how do you ship them on? Because when you look at that list again, it's the weekly wage that's the problem. So the only one out of that sort of group you might try and keep is Rasmus Højlund, to try and coach him into being a good striker, because the rest of them, as Robbo said, or Augie said, they're on a lot of money. You ain't getting 55 million back for Mason Mount. You ain't getting 60 million back for Casemiro. Xerxes, no. Anthony at 80 million. Dear me, be lucky if you got 20 million for him. So the hit that they're going to have to take with PSR is how on earth do they try and find something in the summer? I potentially see Rashford going probably somewhere like a Dortmund on loan with Man United paying wages. Similar sort of story when Jadon Sancho went there. That might be a little move for Rashford that he might think of, just to go and play somewhere in the short term. But that's it. It's short term, long term for Man United. What on earth do they do? How do they get a group of players that I think are not good enough out the door for a reasonable amount of money in with PSR to then try and go again to build a brand new squad, which is going to take fortunes to get them anywhere near the top four again? It's just a wheel that they're on at the minute, where they're just going back and forth, and it's just, I mean, he's only got 2 years, Amorim. He ain't solving this in 2 years. It's incredible.
Yeah.